Brethren, the presentation that I've taken from Solomon is entitled Tyre, the City of the Rock, a brief history of Tyre and its significance to Freemasons. No city, apart from Jerusalem, holds a greater interest for Freemasons than Tyre. Once the capital of ancient Phoenicia, it is a city which is closely bound up in the story of the building of King Solomon's temple. Tyre is a very old city. Unlike many ancient cities, its site has never been lost and its original location never in doubt. The founding of Tyre occurred at an unknown date. As a measure of its antiquity, the city is mentioned and recorded in Egyptian papyri dating back to the 13th and 14th centuries BCE. The earliest native name for the land situated at the eastern end of the Mediterranean was Canaan, taken from the Hebrew word Canaanai, which means merchant. It's a name well suited to characterize the Phoenicians who, because of the nature of their country and its location, were forced to turn to the sea where they engaged in trade and navigation. The ancient country of Phoenicia was beautiful in the extreme. Known as the land of the palms, it was situated along the middle of the Mediterranean's eastern shore. To the south of it lay Palestine, and to the north Syria, of which it is still part today. It was a small and narrow country, about 120 miles from north to south, and only 30 miles wide at its greatest width. The sea washed upon its western shores, and the giant mountains of Lebanon shut it off like a rampart to the east. The Phoenicians were a most remarkable race, possibly the world's first known sailors and explorers. They ventured along the Mediterranean coastline until they knew the vast inland sea as their own. They had circumnavigated it ages before the Greeks and Romans followed in their path. They even ventured out beyond the limits of the Straits of Gibraltar, even as far as Britain, where they purchased large quantities of tin from Cornwall to enable them to make bronze by mixing it with copper. Much of their wealth at this time may be attributed to their vast manufacture of bronze. The Phoenicians excelled in producing textiles, in carving ivory, working in stone, wood. Above all, they invented the skill of glassmaking. One of their chief items of trade was a dye, Phoenician or Tyrian purple, discovered from the shell of the murex, a small shellfish. Purple has always been the colour of royalty, and in ancient times it was hard to obtain. As Freemasons, we can now begin to tie this information into our understanding of the activities of Hiram, king of Tyre, in supporting Solomon, king of Israel, during the building of the temple at Jerusalem. Hiram, or Huram, as he was also known, of whom the Bible tells us was a contemporary of Solomon and David, was the first ruler of Tyre who came to the throne in 980 BCE at the age of 19 and ruled his country for nearly 40 years. It would be incorrect to think of Hiram, king of Tyre, merely as an ally of the Hebrew kings who sent them cedar from the forests of Lebanon for the construction of the temple and other projects. The Hebrew nation looked up to the Phoenicians as more cultured and learned neighbours. The Israelites were never builders, overseers, and designers capable of the creation of one of the finest temples ever to have been built at this time in history. King Solomon was a practical and intelligent man, and he would have taken advantage of the fact that there was on his doorstep a group of builders ready, able, and willing to complete the project. Hence, the temple at Jerusalem was of Phoenician design. The overseers and skilled craftsmen, artists, and workers in metal were also Phoenician, and the many thousands of unskilled labourers assisted in the work and were recruited from the local population. The city of Tyre would have been more like a modern city than any other place in antiquity. Not only did Tyre have its open plazas and squares, it had what could be described as high-rise buildings due to the limited space within the city. They enlarged the island portion of the city by filling in the shallower regions of the surrounding sea. These were the wharves, with all the necessary development to support the comings and goings of hustling merchants. Truly the air of enterprise, of eagerness and adventure. Time passed, and then in 727 BCE brought a tragic change. These were the days of the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians, who, rising in their merciless power, were determined to reduce Palestine to ruins. They were also determined to conquer Phoenicia, which hitherto had remained unconquered. The mainland of Phoenicia was ravished, and the old Tyre on the mainland destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, and remained in ruins, but they were unable to land upon the rock. This brought about the first great naval battle in history, when 12 Tyrian ships defeated the Assyrian fleet of 60. Over the ensuing decades, battles seemed to alternate between the Assyrians, the Persians, in their attempt to occupy Tyre, the city of the rock. However, the final and most tremendous siege took place in 332 BCE and was its conquest by Alexander the Great, brings the last of many memorable sieges which the island of Tyre withstood. The unconquered citadel, which had stood for over 1,000 years, lasted 7 months. Alexander had no intention of sitting down and waiting to starve the inhabitants into submission. Instead, he built a causeway from the shore across 1/2 mile of channel and, storming the citadel, sacked the town. In due course, fugitives from Tyre returned to their ruined city and without interference began to rebuild it. The Romans, sensing its value as a trading station, encouraged its growth. Sometime later came the days of the European Crusades against the infidel possessors of the Holy Land. Tyre, the port of this entire region, was besieged by Saracens and Crusaders in turn. Finally, the Turks became masters of all this land as part of the Asiatic Turkey in the 16th century. Neither sieges nor earthquakes had done so much as Turkish oppression and misrule to make the great city of Tyre what the traveller now sees, a rock for fishermen to spread their nets on. And there, brethren, is the story of the town and city of Tyre. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, brethren. Thank you for your very kind attention.